Good morning, and thank you for joining us here today. We are gathered on the traditional territory of the signatories of Treaty 6, and I want to acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. I'm Rod Loyola, infrastructure critic for the Alberta NDP and the MLA for Edmonton-Ellerslie. I'm proud to stand here today with my colleagues Rhiannon Hoyle, the Alberta NDP candidate for Edmonton South, Nathan Ip, the Alberta NDP candidate for Edmonton Southwest, Jody Calahoo Stonehouse, the Alberta NDP candidate for Edmonton Rutherford, as well as Raki Pancholi, the Alberta NDP critic for Children's Services, Jasvir Diol, the Alberta NDP critic for Multiculturalism, and of course, our leader, Rachel Notley. We are here today to affirm Alberta NDP's commitment to the construction of a new hospital right here in South Edmonton. We are all doing a lot of door knocking, and I can tell you, the chaos in our healthcare and the fear of not being able to get to care when it's needed is top of mind for so many families in my riding and across Edmonton. The nearest hospital from here is the Grey Nuns, and it's full. In 2017, our Alberta NDP government announced that South Edmonton would be home to a new state-of-the-art hospital, which would play a crucial role in expanding critical care services, community care, and much-needed bed capacity for the Edmonton region. Unfortunately, when Albertans drive by the proposed site, there has been almost no change. Under the NDP government, the South Edmonton Hospital was scheduled to be opened by 2026-2027 and would be adding an additional 491 beds to the Edmonton region. Now the UCP has delayed the hospital indefinitely. What's more, through new documents obtained by the Alberta NDP, the UCP are the only ones offering a fraction of the beds of communities that are needed. A report obtained by the Alberta NDP shows that an Alberta NDP consultant suggested reducing the bed count from Edmonton South hospitals to 315 beds. If they go through with that plan, this will only mean more delays in access, care, and more hallway medicine like we've seen over the last few years. Let me be clear. We committed to starting construction in 2020 and completing the hospital by 2027. Projections for starting construction were delayed to 2023, and now the government's website. The start, end, and end dates are removed altogether. As you will see, there is an empty field where a construction site should be. This hospital is just another broken promise to the people of Edmonton and the surrounding communities by the UCP. We are told that the UCP has spent almost $4 million in taxpayer dollars on planning and consultation fees, and Smith still doesn't know when the hospital will be built or even what they are building. While the UCP continues to fail the families in the capital region and ignores their healthcare needs, our leader, our candidates, and our party are ready to stand up for them. We cannot afford to keep delaying the critically needed hospital. And that is why an Alberta NDP government will get the hospital built as part of our strategy to tackle the healthcare crisis. I would now like to turn it over to my friend and candidate for Edmonton South, Rhiannon Hoyle.
Thank you, Rod. The Edmonton South Hospital is critical for me and my constituency. In 2017, I was honored to stand with Premier Rachel Notley when the hospital was first announced. At that time, I was president of the Heritage Point Community League and was able to speak about how important this project is and how excited residents in Edmonton South were for the new hospital. Instead of seeing the hospital start to take shape, I'm back at a mic, standing with Rachel Notley, frustrated that South Edmonton Hospital has been delayed again and again. The empty field in the heart of my riding clearly shows the failures of Daniel Smith and the UCP government. I live in this community. It is my home for over 18 years. To see that this proposed site in our backyard, it is in my backyard, I can see this site from my home, where healthcare and this hospital are so important to this constituency. I hear it all the time. People are struggling to find a family doctor. They are worried that an ambulance will not come when they need it. And far too many people are waiting months longer than they should for needed surgeries. I know all too well the need for access to hospital care. I remember having to drive during rush hour to take my son to the Grey Nuns Hospital as he dealt with anaphylaxis, a rapid onset severe allergic reaction where every second counts. We will end the chaos in Alberta's healthcare by bringing back care that Albertans can rely on. And the first step is to build the Edmonton South Hospital. This constituency of Edmonton South is made up of seniors and young families. This hospital will give families like mine the peace of mind to good quality and good access to healthcare near their home, and allow seniors to stay in their homes for longer. Right now, the closest hospital is either the Grey Nuns or the University of Alberta Hospital. Both are over 20 to 25 minutes without traffic and over 45 minutes during peak travel times. In an emergency, these minutes can mean everything. And that is why I am proud to run with Rachel Notley as the candidate for Edmonton South. We will be able to finish what the UCP failed to deliver and build the Edmonton South Hospital. To speak more about our plan to build the South Edmonton Hospital, I am very pleased to introduce our leader, Rachel Notley.
Well, thank you so much, Rhiannon, and thank you, Rod, for your observations, and also thank you to Nathan and to Jody and to Jasvir and, of course, to Raki, who have worked so hard and tirelessly advocated for this project for a very long time. So let me just start by pointing out, first of all, that it was actually, this government has actually already spent $400 million on this project. Not 4 million, but 400 million, with nothing to show for it. And the fact of the matter is it is needed by families, not just here in Edmonton, but across Alberta. An Alberta NDP government will rebuild strong and stable public health care so Albertans can get the care they need, when they need it, where they need it, close to home. I am committed, for instance, to ensuring we have the largest healthcare recruitment campaign ever seen in the history of our province. I'm also committed to projects like this South Edmonton Hospital that will bring world-class care to our families. This hospital would have been the first new hospital in the Edmonton region since the Grey Nuns opened in 1988, over 33 years ago. This new hospital will not serve just Edmonton families, but it will serve many families who live in surrounding communities. But since then, South Edmonton has seen some of the fastest population growth in the country. According to some reports, Edmonton's own right now is short over 400 beds and is projected to be short almost 1,500 beds by 2027. Yet, the UCP has no plans to address it. So I'm here today to commit that our NDP government would take a different approach. Instead, what we will do is we'll press forward urgently with the South Edmonton Hospital and do everything we can to speed up the timeline. We'll also build the new South Edmonton Hospital to reflect the needs of the communities it will serve. And we will not jeopardize your health care just to cut costs. Finally, as part of our commitment to the most ambitious plan Alberta has ever seen to recruit and train new healthcare workers, we will ensure that the new hospital is fully staffed. And even before that, as I've said, we will aggressively recruit and train healthcare professionals to staff the existing hospitals we have within the capital region and across this province. That is exactly the plan the Alberta NDP will deliver to Albertans. Because we believe it is important to provide stable, competent, and caring leadership when it comes to healthcare. And we must end the UCP chaos in our healthcare system, ensuring that healthcare is there for every person in Edmonton and the surrounding communities and across the province when they need it. Now, before I take your questions about the hospital, I'd also like to speak briefly about the federal healthcare deal that was offered to the provinces. Short version is, it's not enough. The dollar figures are simply too small, and the escalator figures barely keep up with inflation. healthcare across Canada is in crisis. And so we need the federal government to commit to changing their participation in a qualitative way to support provinces as they seek to rebuild healthcare. The offer from the federal government doesn't do that, but it also doesn't let the UCP off the hook for their role in starving the system. The provincial health budget today is $1.7 billion short of where it would have been had it kept up with population and inflation growth. Fact is, you can't take $1.7 billion out of our healthcare without it having a real impact. And that's what we have seen through the UCP. Dozens of rural hospitals partially closed, urban emergency rooms overwhelmed, ambulances delayed longer and longer. And over the past days, we've seen very worrying episodes where seniors who are sick enough to be in hospital were denied even an ambulance to get there. So the fact is, we need the feds to do better, but we also need the provincial government to serve as a stable and caring leader that will take its responsibility to deliver healthcare to Albertans seriously. And that is something that you can bank on receiving from an Alberta NDP government. So thank you, and we are happy to take any questions that folks here may have.
Can you speak to the plan then, how to expedite construction?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to find out why the UCP has delayed it so much. So they've already spent about over 20% of what the whole project was to have cost when it was completed. And we have nothing to show for it, just an empty field. Construction was to have started 3 years ago and then this year, and now we have no idea when it's going to start. So the first thing we need to do is bring all the planning and failure to plan out into the open so that we can understand what the delay is. Then we need to move very quickly, working with the advisory groups to properly scale the project and start looking for people to build it. And we are very close to having the Calgary Cancer Centre completed. That is something that we made a decision on at the very beginning of our mandate in 2015. Construction began a year later, and the project is almost finished now. So it is possible to do that work if you believe in completing it. I think the problem we have here is that the UCP has basically decided to cancel it, but they haven't had the courage to tell the people of Edmonton and Northern Alberta that that is the decision that they have made. So the way you get things moving faster is you say, we will build it, and then you keep your promise and you build it.
So to be clear, if elected to the NDP would go back to the original plan?
We will go back to the original plan and we will move forward with it as quickly as we can.
And at what cost is that to be determined?
Well, we had originally estimated that it would be around $1.8 billion. I suspect now, with all the delay, that cost may go up a bit. But generally speaking, our plan is to stay within the parameters that we had put forward back when we first announced it in 2017.
Any other questions on the phone? Just a reminder to press star 9 for joining us on the phone. Raise hand function. Joining us on Zoom. Say your name and your comment at the top. Our first call.
Hi, Rachel. It's Michelle Fontaine from CBC. So I'm curious. So you're promising today to resume work on or at least expedite work on the hospital in Edmonton. You're also promising to move on the expansion of the Red Deer Hospital. How is Alberta going to afford all this stuff?
Listen, the fact of the matter is that we can't afford to ignore these important infrastructure needs. One of the most important things that a provincial government provides to its citizens is adequate health care. The Red Deer Hospital, the need for the expansion of the Red Deer Hospital is absolutely critical. What we are seeing in terms of projections here in Edmonton is that we will be short almost 1,500 beds in and around Edmonton by 2027. So it's a thing that provincial governments do, which is invest in healthcare infrastructure. So we will ensure that it is done in a timely and cost-effective way with capital investment accordingly.
Yeah, okay, I do, yes, thank you. In terms of staffing, I know that you're promising to have the most aggressive recruitment campaign ever if you get elected this spring. But I mean, there is only a limited capacity, a limited number of healthcare providers. So isn't that a concern as well? Is that you can build a hospital all you want, but you need the people to run it. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Mazikowski hospital or institute, where I think that was an issue when they first opened.
Mm-hmm. No, and you know, the healthcare workforce is a really important issue, Michelle, and certainly we will be rolling out more components to a plan that we have to ensure that we support and grow our healthcare workforce here in Alberta. And so you're quite right. It is a thing that government must pay very urgent attention to, and that's generally speaking what we've already committed to doing. So above and beyond recruitment efforts, we need to engage with frontline providers to find out what incentives will bring them back into the workforce, bring them to Alberta, what we can do to perhaps extend folks' career past what would normally be retirement or what perhaps already has been retirement, as well as increasing training spots, and once and for all finally starting to remove some of the barriers with respect to foreign trained medical credentialing. So there's a lot of elements to that plan, absolutely, Michelle. And so that is something that has to be done at the same time that we have a government that is focused on aggressively growing our healthcare workforce on the front lines through a range of considered and strategic strategies, at the same time that we are making sure that the infrastructure is there for them when they're ready to provide that support and that service to Albertans.
Next caller.
Today, I have a question regarding the attack ads that came out yesterday. The UCP, when the Premier, of course, was in Ottawa, the UCP launched a couple of attack ads specifically aimed at you, Ms. Notley. What do you make of these ads?
Well, it reaffirms the fact that we are in a pre-election period, and obviously the UCP is going to engage in campaigning, and that is what they were doing. I'm frankly happier to see the UCP spending money on it than to see the UCP government spending taxpayer dollars on campaigning, which I'm afraid is something we are going to see way too much of. But I haven't seen the ads themselves, but you know, election's close, so that's how we know.
And is this a precursor or a foreshadowing, rather, of just how the campaign is going to be in terms of parties attacking the leaders on a personal level? What is your thought in terms of the kind of campaign we're going to see coming up?
You know, listen, what we are going to do is we are certainly going to remind Albertans of certain things, not about personal things about, you know, the leader of the UCP, Danielle Smith, but rather about policy positions she's taken. So, for instance, we are here today talking about healthcare, and we will remind Albertans about things that Danielle Smith has said in the recent past, which should worry any Albertan who wants to see our healthcare system get better and be there for them, as opposed to getting considerably more chaotic and less capable of caring for their loved ones. But that's not personal, that's policy. So whether the UCP engages in that same kind of thing, I don't know. But we will also be doing everything we can to talk about our positive vision for Alberta and our plans, things that we would do. That's what today is about. It's about actually pointing out that we committed to building a hospital here, and we are recommitting to getting that project moving again, should we be so privileged as to serve in the position of government for Albertans again.
Next caller.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This is Lisa from the Journal. Thanks for speaking a little bit about the healthcare proposal from the federal government, Rachel, but I'm wondering if you can comment specifically about some of the details. Obviously, there are some conditions attached But the AUPE is concerned, they sent out a press release today, they're concerned that Smith's government could use the new money to further privatize and contract out frontline services, and that there's nothing in the deal stopping that. Do you share those same concerns, and are the conditions or the strings attached to the deal significant in your mind?
Well, I guess I would pull back one step before that at this point, because I think that the deal itself is not significant enough or large enough for the federal government to put a heck of a lot of strings on any provincial governments, I'm afraid. It in essence is a deal to essentially cover population and inflation. So it's essentially status quo. And so that's a challenge. All I can say is that our government, should we be elected, will focus very much on doing everything we can as much as possible in the public sphere, solely because we know that the more you introduce the profit motive into the delivery of healthcare, the more money gets diverted to that away from patient care. And so as a principle, that is the approach that we would take.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm also wondering, I think you're being quite clear that you don't think that this deal is enough, but given the urgent situation that our healthcare system is in right now, would you, if you were in office right now, aim to sign the deal as soon as possible, get the money flowing, or what do you think, is there urgency to signing this deal and getting it out the door?
Oh, I think there's urgency not only for getting as much money as you can from the federal government as quickly as possible, but also for the provincial government to do their homework and restore the funding that they have pulled from the healthcare system since they've been in office. Separate and apart from the episodic funding that we saw around COVID, which is unpredictable and cannot be built into planning in years forward, this UCP government has cut $1.7 billion out of our healthcare system when population and inflation are taken into account. And so there is urgency to correct those mistakes by this provincial government. There is urgency to get as much federal funding in as we can. There is urgency to engage in ambitious public policy work around recruiting and growing new healthcare professionals and growing our healthcare workforce, as well as ensuring that folks get access to family medical care, which is another thing that we will be talking about propositionally in more detail with some of our ideas in the days to come.
Hi there, Catherine Rukowski with Alberta Today. Thanks for taking our questions. So you mentioned that this federal health funding framework, it's not enough money. The emphasis seemed to be on rural and remote family care, as well as long-term care and home care, as opposed to hospitals. Sounds like you're looking to do it all and launch this massive recruitment campaign. With this inadequate funding from the federal government, I'm wondering where this money is going to come from. Is this going to, are you going to make up the difference from the provincial budget? Are you expecting the federal government to change their plans? Like, where's the money for all this coming from?
Well, as I've said, we are committing to restoring the funding that the provincial government has taken out of our healthcare system. So that is part of it, for sure. We are going to have to fund more into public healthcare because the provincial government, I'm sorry, did I say federal? The provincial government has taken money out of our provincial healthcare system. So we do need to restore that funding. Above and beyond, though, I mean, we are certainly hopeful to be able to secure more funding from the federal government. Other parts of it, we've already talked about with respect to post-secondary investments. We see that as an investment in our future, and so increasing more spaces there and making education more affordable is something that we have already committed to. And then some of the stuff around working with regulatory bodies to remove the barriers to a foreign medical professional credentials being recognized, that's more of a regulatory issue. So there's a broad range of efforts that we can make, as well as some changes in organizing how we deliver the healthcare, which is something I'll be talking about more in the days to come, that don't necessarily entirely end up being about dollars, but also are about delivering healthcare more effectively.
Yeah, and the other thing that the Premier brought up in Ottawa yesterday was the just transition, and she had a one-on-one meeting with the Prime Minister. She had a list of demands that aren't too dissimilar from what you want to see. You want to see Alberta at the table. You want to see increased workforce training and participation in both conventional and non-conventional energy sectors. The Alberta Federation of Labour and Industry seem to all be on board in saying we need to get this deal done very quickly, because the Inflation Reduction Act in the US means if we don't have similar incentives, Canada could be left behind. And I'm wondering if you have any comment on how the Premier has gone about these Just Transition or Sustainable Job Transition Act talks.
Well, I think both Danielle Smith as well as the UCP and the leadership in the UCP before her have stumbled and dropped the ball when it comes to this important work. The reality is that they have politicized and weaponized this issue rather than being at the table, rolling up their sleeves, doing the hard work of negotiating on behalf of Alberta working people to get the best deal possible so that we could be actually working on something productive. So yes, I ultimately said that the federal government had to slow down because they were off creating a lot of plans without Alberta at the table, without a whole bunch of Albertans being involved in the project. And certainly when we saw the memo that supported Minister Wilkinson's testimony to a committee from last summer, and we saw some of the language there and the scope of the changes that they anticipated, that was deeply concerning to us. Now, so I think that the UCP has failed Albertans, though, because this is work that should have started 18 months ago. And I think that there is actually a way to see all of this as an opportunity to maintain and support current industrial jobs here in Alberta, and an opportunity to attract more investment, not only from the federal government, but from the private sector in emissions reduction technologies, thereby creating more jobs and further broadening the market for Alberta's oil and gas. These opportunities have been missed by a UCP government that was more interested in playing politics than addressing serious issues confronting the industry. And so that is a difference in terms of what you would see from our government. We would roll up our sleeves and get to work, standing up on behalf of Albertans to get real results for Alberta working people.
That's all for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.